その顔を生かして玉残し狙う方がまだマシかもね。
ダブル美術大学映像研究科アニメーション専攻を修了したばかりで、その前は多摩美術大学グラフィックデザイン学科に、学部の時は通っていました。これからフルピリオドを始めてアニメーションを見たいと思います。
つうか、美術部ってことは美大とか行きたいわけ？知ってる？大学の学費、医学、薬学、歯学、美術の分で高いんだぜ。
高いんですよね。そう、200万とかで私が
Roughly 2 weeks. It has been roughly 2 weeks since my last proper upload. It's already been 4 weeks, you dum-dum, but go on. Partially because I was sick. Oh damn, this thing is brighter than my future. What the hell? So yeah, partially the blame for that is because I was sick for a couple days. Thankfully, it wasn't Mr. C19, the dreaded C19. But another reason is that I lost some of the footage that I was supposed to use. Blah, 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 blah. That guy was going on and on about his trials and tribulations when it comes to tech and finances. But I'm here to talk to you about my troubles and tribulations when it comes to being an artist. There are so many things that I learned about myself because of this art progress video. But let me show you something. Like, for example, this sketchbook right here.
Yeah, this thing is actually completely empty. I did not draw anything on it at all, like how I did not draw anything on its big brother that I found a couple days ago. This is also completely empty. Poor things must have gone on for years without any drawings at this point, and I had to resort to asking my mom for content.
So unfortunately, my hometown is one of those places that would sometimes get affected by those severe floods that would cause a lot of damage and would cause people to have to sleep on top of their cars. Yeah, that was a fun time. And apparently some of my old sketches and my art were lost in a recent flood, according to my parents. So even if I wanted to show you some things from my past, like my childhood, my elementary school days, my high school days, there's not really a whole lot. Fortunately though, I still have memories from when I was 10, 11 years old, when I started drawing as one of my hobbies, and I still remember the things that influenced my art style at that time. And this guy is holding the key.
This is basically just a simulation of how I drew back in the day when I was influenced by G.I. Joe of all things, and I wasn't really aware of anime and manga. But with my balloon-like muscle structures, I'm sure these characters would pass an audition to become characters in Baki the Grappler, even though I don't really like that art style nowadays.
Also, I remember that during that time, Magic the Gathering was the most popular card game at school, and everybody that had money was playing that game, but I didn't have money, so I had to make my own cards and make my own game, essentially, with the card designs from the art that I've made. So I had to put the art and put them in the cards and make my own flavor text and make my own card abilities and stuff like that. So that's the only reason why I started drawing in the first place. I guess that's why this is actually a really good representation of how I started my art journey. So I'm not sure if you could tell, but I wasn't really obsessed with art growing up. It was more like it was something I could do, and there were some benefits to being able to produce a good painting or a good drawing from time to time. And I wanted to become a game developer instead of an artist, so I took computer science when I was in university. So I was so surprised when my sister came in clutch and messaged me the other day and reminded me that I had this thing right here. This thing right here is a photo of the first and only traditional painting that I've ever finished in my entire life, and this was during the first year of university, and I don't even remember what this was actually for. And also, I don't remember drawing so much back when I was in university because we were, just busy programming and stuff. Fast forward years later, and pen tablets became increasingly more and more affordable for people with low incomes and hobbyists like myself. And I thought to myself, hey, I'm a halfway decent artist, right? I was able to make that one painting that one time, so why not try some digital art? So I bought myself a pen tablet, not unlike this. This is an XP pen tablet, but I had a really old Wacom Intuos tablet, and I was able to start drawing some digital stuff.
And this was the very first image that I made. I remember being so frustrated because I couldn't draw the fingers and the hands very well, but at some point I just let it go and finished the piece. I know it doesn't really stand the test of time, but I kind of like that it gives me that 2000s anime vibe because it's very nostalgic, and I feel like all my other drawings at this period of time kind of gives me that vibe. And oh yeah, I think these were around 2010, 2011 when I made these things. Looking back at these pieces now, I can see that there's a lack of confidence when it comes to line work. And you could definitely tell that this was an amateur when it comes to pen and pan tablets, and also when it comes to digital coloring, because I really struggled with coloring, and even now I don't think that I'm as confident with my colored artwork than with my black and whites. So yeah, raise your hands if you're similar to me and you kind of feel that your sketches look better than your actual finished products, because that's how I feel like most of the time. Overall, I think the crowning glory of this period of my life when it comes to art is this Hatsune Miku Project Diva artwork that I made, because I consciously made the effort to finish this from scratch. So I was really happy when I was able to do that. And you can probably tell that I drew a lot of females this time around. And I think my mindset at that time was that because I was drawing a lot of buff dudes and soldiers back in my G.I. Joe days, I decided to balance things out and draw a lot more females so I can get a lot more practice with drawing girls. But nowadays, I can draw a lot more different types of characters and things, so thankfully I became more flexible.
Since drawing was just a passing hobby for me at the time, I eventually stopped making digital art, and I wouldn't pick it back up until a couple years later when I decided to move to Japan and become a manga artist. But I did not immediately jump straight back into the deep end of digital art. I went and did some traditional stuff first. Another one. Yeah, let's talk about this.
Okay, let's start off with this thing, and judging by the Iron Man with the incorrectly drawn helmet at the very front, I would say this was around 2013, 2014 after the release of Iron Man 3, and around that time I started studying Japanese in Japan, and after I just arrived in Tokyo. And I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hesitating to show this part because this was not really a sketchpad, and some of these things are, most of these things are actually not complete. But because I don't really draw a whole lot, I wanted to give you a raw representation of how I approached art during those years. And I think the very first thing you'd notice is that I was very messy when it comes to taking down notes, and my sketches and doodles lacked any sort of focus or any sort of direction or even a sense of completion. At some point, I started trying to use circles in my sketches to try to incorporate some things that I learned from basic art classes in high school, but because I only had vague recollections of them, I couldn't implement the proper concepts. But I remember it was still pretty fun to mess around with the sketches using those circles. By the way, all the things that I drew here, I tried to draw from imagination and from my memory only. So some of the characters that you might recognize here are still inaccurate. And I'm the type of person that would definitely need a reference if I'm trying to draw fan art. Overall, during this period, I think I only had a marginal improvement when it came to my art style and consistency, but I think I gained better pen control, which would translate into better digital artwork later on into the future. And here we are with the first of the actual only two sketchpads that I've used, this one dating back to 2015 to 2016. It's mostly just the same really, it's just a bunch of unfocused sketches, especially of faces, and there are also circles here in this sketchpad. And I think one of the biggest observations that I have when it comes to this sketchpad specifically is that I was not really consistent, especially with the proportions of the facial features of my characters. And if there's one thing that makes me regret not having that habit of drawing every day, it would be that. Consistency. So yeah, not really a whole lot to say about this one, even though I improved a little bit aesthetically. And I think you'll agree with me that the next sketchbook is much better than this one. And also, I'll just let it speak for itself. Yeah, that was definitely my favorite sketchbook out of 2 sketchbooks. But it's not over yet because I still have some stuff to show you guys when it comes to my traditional art. I can't really put a date on most of the drawings here, but one of them was drawn in 2015, so I believe all of these were drawn during the stretch of 2015 to 2019. Some of these are original concepts and characters, but most of these are fan art of some anime characters that you may be familiar with, so see if you can spot them. By the way, these were drawn on colored paper from my day job, but I wanted to know what it would feel like to draw manga traditionally, so the next few pieces of art were drawn on actual manga drafting paper. If you're a patron of mine, you probably would have already seen the colored artwork behind this thing, but the one in front is the traditionally inked line art that I made using a G-Pen, manga ink, and markers. And once again, here's the colored artwork that I finished using a computer. And thankfully at that point, I was a little bit more confident with digital coloring. The next piece of art is actually from the manga class that I took, and we were assigned to draw someone weird that joined high school. I also ended up completing a penciled artwork of Rurouni Kenshin's Kenshin, and I think this was kind of fun to make because the manga paper was pretty big. Afterwards, I wanted to practice a little bit more inking, so I started but not finished this Kylo Ren and Darth Vader artwork. And that was when I realized that traditional inking is kind of messy if you're not aware of what you're doing. And then we have this piece right here, and if you don't know the character that inspired this artwork, then we can't really be friends. Sorry. I'm realizing this only now, but you know how I mentioned that my experience with pencil actually helped me with better pen control for digital art? I think it also helped me get better with the G-Pen because the traditional G-Pen is a little tricky to get used to, especially if you don't have a graceful touch or a soft touch when using a pen. And after seeing all these traditional sketches and drawings that I've made over the past 10 years or so, I can confidently say that the tool that I'm most comfortable with using and the one that I enjoy the most is still the good old pencil. And I hope you guys have enjoyed what you've seen so far. Okay, let's take a little bit of a breather because I still have some stuff to show you guys, but I want to talk about how I was able to actually make progress with my art because objectively speaking, I think I've gotten better, but I'm nowhere near the level that I want to be in. Of course, I'm not the only artist that would tell you that it's a never-ending process and people are always going to be chasing after that level of skill that's currently higher than theirs. But comparatively to all these people, rest in peace Kim Jung-gi, one of the best artists that I've seen online especially, I am nowhere near their level. I have so many fundamental skills that I have still yet to learn, and I have a different mindset when it comes to people, especially for those of you that draw every day. I admire you a lot. But one thing that I was able to make use of, especially of the things that I learned from when I was in university, is that I was able to think more critically and approach art from a problem-solving perspective or a logical perspective. So instead of brute forcing my way to better art by drawing every day, I decided to understand what I was drawing first. Like human figures, for example. Human figures are always tricky to draw, especially when you're talking about foreshortening, because you know that when your hand is closed like this, it looks much bigger than the rest of your body. So you know that your whole body occupies 3D space. And how does the body occupy 3D space? That's one of the questions that I wanted to answer in my head, so I came up with something like this. Now obviously I didn't pioneer the idea of using 3D shapes to better understand space and depth in art, but I think trying to figure it out for myself first before going on to YouTube and finding online tutorials, I was able to develop this habit of thinking about art more carefully before I committed anything on paper. So yeah, I guess for me it was less about being an actual artist and drawing every day, and more so about being a good art critic and judge so I can learn how to ask the right questions so I can also get the right answers. And also I tried to figure things out for myself before I consulted things online or before I went to YouTube tutorials. But you know, enough about that. Let's go back to my art progress. Oh my god. I broke it. You can't make this up. I went into my second foray into digital art when I got my hands on a second-hand iPad Pro in 2019. My adaptation to the hardware change was interesting, because I'd never really drawn on a fast tablet with a screen before, and the Apple Pencil was completely different from what I've used in the past. I drew a lot of black and white at the beginning using Procreate to get used to this new drawing tool, and I never really finished any complete artwork. But then I started coloring again, and I noticed that I had improved significantly since 2010. Of course, that's a long time, and I could definitely nitpick a lot of mistakes and inconsistencies, but for someone who looks at other people's art more than actually drawing, I was pretty happy with my progress. I had really started absorbing more of what I have been watching from more experienced and faster artists, and with their help, I felt like I was finally getting somewhere. This is a story for another time, but I was a Twitch streamer from 2020 to 2022, and Genshin Impact is one of the games I streamed a lot. I was initially drawn in by the game's aesthetic, so naturally I ended up making a bit of art for some of the characters I liked in the game. I didn't really grow a lot on Twitch, but I did make connections with some amazing people during that time, including Jen Losi and Corey Yi. If you don't know who they are, those are the English voice actors for Ganyu and Goro in Genshin Impact, and I'm going to put the links to their Twitch streams below because they are amazing and you should definitely watch them. Long story short, they ended up commissioning me for some art, and I of course obliged. It was the perfect opportunity for me to grow, as someone who's never really had art commission experience beforehand. For Jen, it was very fun to bring to life her brilliant idea of a light novel parody cover art featuring Ganyu. For Corey, I had to bring my A-game to design an anime-style iteration of his original World of Warcraft character, Dex Fenrir. Of course, I continued making manga all the while. Through the good times and the tough times, I've been learning and I have been growing. And I've got the feeling my manga will reach more people in the coming future. Sometimes it felt like such a crawl this past decade or so. There has definitely been some progress in my journey, but it's only just the beginning. And I've only just learned to walk.